Hi, my name is Kelly Roy, and I'm going to be teaching structural family therapy today. Structural family therapy was developed in the 1960s by Salvador Munichen. It was originally developed to help families that were experiencing a disorganization as well as a crisis. This theory's main focus is on the structure of the family and the roles, norms, and behaviors that each person has within the family. This theory is different than family emotion system as it focuses on the structure rather than the emotions of the family. It does have a lot more concrete intervention techniques, and the main focus is to identify the problematic structures that exist within a family. This theory can be applied to many families, including families that are experiencing violence, families that are experiencing a member who has a drug addiction, someone who is acting out, or if they have children or another family member that's plagued with a physical or a mental illness, according to Walsh and Harrigan. Walsh has also mentioned that it pays close attention to the structure, mainly the organization of the family, the hierarchy in the family, who has what role, such as the dad being a breadwinner, etc. When one member of the family acts out or has a developmental change or need, according to Prelai, Protinsky, and Cross article, how the family affects with that change and how the family reorganizes themselves is called adaptability. Also, according to the Prelai et al. Article, is cohesion. It's how connected or how separate the family is. Walsh explained in the book that emotional lives and behaviors of each member will develop appropriately when there is suitable authority in the family, when each person has their appropriate roles, when there's correct boundaries in place, and when there's also healthy subsystems. Some concepts that Walsh mentioned in the article for structural family therapy are family structure, subsystems, executive authority, boundaries, rules, roles, alliances, triangles, flexibility, communication, a couple others, cultural considerations, family goals, family myths, family life cycle, and external systems influences. As Walsh mentioned, family structure is who shares the decision making in the family. The composition of the family is who is in the family, such as the mom, dad, siblings, etc. Subsystems, according to Walsh, are two members excluding all others. According to the Lopez article, there could be a marital subsystem, the two people who are married in the family, the parental subsystem, and a sibling subsystem. According to Walsh, executive authority includes the people in the family who are in the decision-making role. Boundaries is the separativeness in the family. There can be internal or external boundaries. External boundaries depend on how involved they are with the community, or, for example, if the parents in the family has a role of family business stays within the family, no one knows it. Internal boundaries could be an example of if a child's allowed to have their own room or not. Also, according to Walsh, rules are the behaviors that each member in the family follows. Each member knows that these are the rules. Roles is the family member's function within the family. Like I said before, if the dad's the breadwinner, these roles could change over time. Also, further, according to Walsh, alliances are two members or subsystems that interact together. Triangles are a type of alliance in which two members come together and turn against a third member. They're doing it subconsciously, though, and it's a relief for a conflict. Flexibility, according to Walsh, is the ability to make adjustments to adhere to the family's changing needs and how flexible they are when the needs happen, whether they do it appropriately or negatively. Communication is just expressing themselves in a clear and direct message. It can be verbal or nonverbal. According to Walsh and Harrigan article, there's two types of communication. Report functions, which is just basic to convey the information, and command functions, which is to define relationships. According to Walsh and Harrigan, there's a couple characteristics of problems that are located within structural family therapy. One is power imbalances. Another is disengaged members or subsystems. If the boundaries in the family are too rigid or too loose and someone's acting out, etc. If there's no support from some members of the family to another member. If members are too dependent on the family. If one member or all the members are resistant to change. If there's avoidance in one member or all member. And also, lastly, according to Walsh and Harrigan, if there's a failure to come back together after a stressful change. In assessment, according to Walsh, the therapist or social worker needs to observe and conversate with the person to find out, or the family, to find out certain things such as patterns of interaction among the family. what the family structure is, who holds the power in the family, if there's subsystems that are obvious to the therapist or social worker, if there's certain patterns to manage stress, what the family does to manage the stress, sensitivity to the family member's feelings if one understands another member's feelings, what the expectations they hold of each other, and lastly, if they're involved with external systems. Further, according to the Lopez article, some certain questions you can ask in the assessment phase would be: describe your family. Are your parents generally in agreement over important decisions? When the parents are in an argument in the family, does the child have to mediate? Also, when the parents are in a fight, does the child have to take sides? Lastly, from the Lopez article, how supportive is the parents of their children? Is one more supportive of each child? Some goals of the intervention, according to Walsh and Harrigan, is to change existing family structure to become more functional. Also, Walsh and Harrigan mentioned they need to realign the family to make a better communication line. According to the Walsh textbook, actions precede change. There needs something to happen in the action in order to make a change, and likely the therapist acts as the expert in this theory. Walsh also mentioned that there is a focus on the process and not the content. In all interventions within this theory, you need to have appropriate repetition. The social worker needs to continually repeat things to them, and if there's a homework assignment, they need to continually show that homework assignment. According to the Mitrani article, the social worker needs to observe and help reshape the family structures. Some interventions, according to Walsh, would be role play, such as role reversal, where a mother would play the son and the son would play the mother, etc. Walsh also mentioned that there needs to be support for the strengths in the family. The social worker can complement if something is going well in the family. Relabeling would also be to change the perspective of the problem to diffuse defensiveness. Track problems as homework. So one family member can go home and complete something over the week and bring it back, and throughout the intervention, the therapist would continually bring that up. Teach stress management to the family, relaxation techniques, deep breathing, etc. Manipulate space. If there is two members in the family who do not get along, the therapist would bring them together and have them sit next to each other. And the last one would be communication skills training. And under communication skills training, the therapist can point out confusing messages. If the mother is telling the son to go spend more time with his friends, but she won't let him out on the weekend, that would be a confusing message. Also, according to Walsh, you need to teach them about nonverbal cues. If they're crossing their arms, if they're rolling their eyes, that's not going to help with the family structure. And lastly, don't allow for interruptions. Each family member needs to speak their own time. According to the Walsh and Harrigan article, termination is a big phase in this theory. The social worker needs to observe the family behavior has changed over time. The self-reports, such as the homework from the family, would show that behavior has changed. Some questionnaires that would be FAD, FACES-4, and IMS, which just mean Family Assessment Device, Family Adaptability and Cohesion Scale, and Index Marital Satisfaction. Lastly, you could do an ECOMAP, which is shown on the board. Lastly, as Walsh and Harrigan mentioned, for termination, check the boundaries in terms of space and how it seems to change over the time, and the therapist needs to use their judgment if there has been an improvement in the client behavior.